Right now, we're joined by my former partner out in Northern California. He used to see Rick on ESPN. He's all over the map with Bleacher Report, doing his thing on radio. Really, really good writer, smart guy, and he's with us here on Tiki and Tierney. Buke, what's happening, buddy? How you been?
Who is this BT?
The nice one now. Yeah, I have kids. I'm soft.
Tiki.
Did he used to go by Brandon?
Since he's had kids, good Lord.
Yeah, it's
a different guy. Like that little drum, that Metallica drum solo, that was Brandon Tierney 24/7. Now, like, there's just kind of, congratulations, dude. But
thank you, buddy. Although now,
wait, Buke, that's congrats to me for lasting 4 years plus now.
I think the birth of my kids.
Brother, hey, that's a whole other story. Yes, sir. Yes,
Look
sir.
at these guys. Look at these guys. And by the way, as much as the platitudes, I see Rick at the Super Bowl. Hey, he walks right by me. He pulls one of these. He's like, I gotta go tape something. I'll be right back.
True.
That's
That's
jacked
not
up.
true. You were deep in conversation. I was late to get someplace, and I said, we will catch up. And then, hey, Tiki, you know how BT is.
Yep.
Like, he's got so much going on.
No,
trying to
not
fit in that
this year.
schedule.
Not this year. We just did nothing.
It's kind of quiet this year,
right?
Rick. A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. So let me ask you this, Rick. You've been around the Warriors really as much as anybody in the business. You live in Northern California. You know Draymond very well. You're incredibly piped into the league itself. The comments by Draymond Green, what's your first reaction when you hear that?
My first reaction was, yeah, that's kind of what's going on here. We appreciate the guy. We appreciate Charles Oakley. And obviously you're referring to the slave mentality comments. I know that there are players in the league that feel, the owners in general, like Donald Sterling just got caught. But the idea that there aren't more owners in the NBA who think like Donald Sterling or have the same sort of mindset when it comes to players or even race. There are a healthy number of players who believe that to be true. Now, my first reaction was that Draymond Green is just saying, for just ripping the Band-Aid off. He's just saying something that a lot of guys think. On second blush, I looked at it and I thought, Draymond, you're playing a card that shouldn't be played here, because when you talk about not just slave mentality, but slave master mentality, it does take you back to a very dark time in our history.
The darkest.
And it's a white and black thing.
Yep.
And James Dolan is an equal opportunity hater. Like, he kicked Marv Albert to the curb because he criticized the organization. It's not color. It's just being an idiot. It's just bad. It's just James Dolan is a bad businessman. And I say that even though the New York Knicks once again are at the top of Forbes' list as far as value. That's not because James Dolan's a great great businessman. It's just the Knicks are impregnable as a brand in New York, combination of market, etc. So it's unfortunate because and I actually had a caller to my show yesterday, an older black gentleman, and he kind of pointed out. He goes, you look at Draymond Green making $80 million. You look at LeBron James and the power that he has with the Cleveland Cavaliers. You have even DeMarcus Cousins with the Sacramento Kings. Like, there are black athletes today that if you're going to say there's a slave master mentality going on here, there's a slave element going on here. He's like, I'm a little closer age-wise to what it really was then. And to play that card when it should not be played devalues the entire conversation, because there is still racism in this country. There still is racism in the NBA. But, like, don't cavalierly go out there making statements unless you have a little more behind it, because otherwise – then it takes a lot of the steam out of the legitimacy of what we should be talking about.
I think that you position that very well. Talking to my old buddy Ric Bucher, of course. Rick, Bleacher Report with us here on Tiki and Tierney, CBS Sports Radio.
Rick, obviously this is going to be something that's going to dominate at least the early part of the All-Star weekend. Do you think Draymond in any way was being calculated? Because we question that.
You mean going as far as making this statement
Yes.
going into the All-Star game or All-Star weekend?
Yes.
I would not be surprised. Look, I don't know what the timing otherwise would have been with his podcast and what he's doing now.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly Draymond is going to say what Draymond thinks whenever he's going to say it. But the fact that he would bring it up at, right before All-Star weekend, let's put it this way. He's not going to avoid that controversy. If the timing happened to be if the timing happened to be great and that it makes it an issue going into All-Star weekend, then he's not going to avoid that. But did he purposely bring this up? I think probably the timing with Oakley and Dolan is what set the time more than anything else.
Rick, what do you think about this? Just to reset this, the sequence. When Draymond was drafted, I was obviously out there, but I wasn't around long enough because then I came to CBS. So I never got to know him. I mean, I was around him a few times, and he was a bit role player trying to find his way. So I don't know him personally. Do you know him? Do you know him as the type of man where, despite always saying what's in his heart and what he believes at the moment, upon reflection, any chance he walks this back?
I don't know that he walks it back. Well, there is a possibility that he walks it back if he thinks that it went sideways or that it became something other than what he intended. Because I do know him as that. I do know him as a guy who reflects upon mistakes that he's made and trying to correct that. So it's not beyond him. He's not one of these guys who's, going to avoid. If he thinks if he said or did something wrong, then he will correct that, and he will admit, that I didn't want to go there or I didn't want to do that. He's done that in the past.
Okay.
With certain situations. I mean, he really did it with the suspension during the finals last year. Like, he took it upon himself. I have to be better than that. I can't let that happen. So I would imagine that it would be the same thing here.
Yeah, no, we see him do some calculated things. And just a basketball question. I think it was a week ago or so, he gets in the face of KD because KD, doesn't really – the pick and roll, he kind of just stands there. He doesn't go down the lane. And Draymond's shot gets blocked. And he does these things. What is the inside dynamic of this Golden State Warriors team?
Well, I mean, it really comes down to KD and Draymond. And Draymond from the very beginning, even when he was – a second-round pick and hadn't established himself, he was one of the voices. I was doing sideline for the Warriors broadcast at that time, and I was in those huddles, and I was struck by how Draymond was more of a presence in those huddles than Steph Curry or anybody else. Mm-hmm. He was the voice of reason. He was the guy who held guys accountable, and they followed him and they listened. And so he remains the largest voice in that team. He's good or bad. He's the conscience of that team. And where I'm not worried about whatever happens with him and KD is because Draymond Green was the guy who recruited KD. And I would dare say that Draymond is a big reason why KD came to the Golden State Warriors. And those two, even to this day, like I can't tell you how many times I've been in the locker room and those guys are texting each other. One of them's already left, and the other guy's looking at his phone, and it's a text from the other guy, and they're figuring out where they're going to go to dinner afterward. They are as tight as any two guys on that team. And so when they have their barking or they're doing whatever, like Draymond feels comfortable doing that with KD because of their relationship. That's not, KD's the new guy, so I know a lot of people from the outside would look at it and go, oh, hey, this thing's going sideways or whatever. It's not that. They have those exchanges, and Draymond goes after KD like that because he knows that he can. That's
good. Hey, Rick, I want to ask you this before I let you go. Ric Bucher, of course, Bleacher Report here on Tiki and Tierney. I remember watching the Warriors' first couple of weeks of the season and saying, man, there's a dearth of size up front. You get the wrong matchup, and that's problematic. Obviously, Bogut was a tough guy, and it seems like they've been able – they've worked around that. But is there a matchup out there that might force them down, in the next week or so to maybe bring somebody in? I don't mean a star, just a role player, a tough guy, couple of fouls, set some picks like Bogut did. Mm-hmm. Is anybody out there that they're pursuing?
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that there's anybody that they're pursuing. I would think that they will look to see what happens, toward the end of the year if somebody is waived and somebody moves on. I don't think they're going to deal for a big man. It does. What does Phoenix do with Tyson Chandler? And I haven't even looked at Tyson's contract status to see where that is. It's not a deal that can be made trade wise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, potentially they could look at that. And you're right. They do. I do think they need to bolster that. JaVale McGee is getting a lot of playing time. But JaVale is just not always in the right place consistently during the regular season.
That's a nice way to put it.
Thank you. I'm trying to be diplomatic in my old age, and so I don't know that he's the answer. The real answer, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. One of the reasons that this smaller lineup has worked is because KD, who is quietly 7 foot and could be a rim protector if he ever really. I don't know if you can get there now, but he has the requisite ability to be that, and you can play him with Draymond. Now you have two guys who are athletic and agile and can protect the rim if KD so chooses to do that. And at times he has. Would he be willing to do that for an entire series? Would he be willing to expend that kind of energy at that end of the floor? If he does, then I reverse my feelings about the Warriors. But I still feel they're vulnerable to the Cavs. They're vulnerable. Difficulty is Oklahoma City and their size is compromised by KD not being there from the scoring standpoint. But they are vulnerable to size, and they will remain so. And KD, in my mind, KD's really the answer rather than going out and getting a piece.
Buke, good chat, buddy. Good catching up. And, obviously you're as piped in as anybody up there. So I think that's some really good perspective on what's happening with the Warriors. Thanks, buddy.
Always appreciate it.
You got it. There he is, Ric Bucher, Bleacher Report.